Hey guys, I'm going to make a quick video on how to remove the carbs on a 2001 Yamaha Banshee. I'll be removing them to replace the needles because they're actually both leaking, and I adjusted the floats and they are still leaking. So I looked at them and one of them has a crease on it, so I'm going to go ahead and replace both of those, but I figured I'd make a quick video to help anyone who needs to know how to remove their carbs. It's a pretty easy job. You only really need 3 tools, Phillips screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, and a set of needle nose pliers. First thing we're going to do is remove the seat just to get it out of the way. It's super easy. There's just a little latch right here on the back. You can just reach in there and lift that up, and then kind of pull the seat back a little bit, and it comes right off. Once you have the seat off, it gives you access to the top of the carbs, which is those 2 parts right here is where the 2 throttle cables go into. You'll need to unscrew those in a little bit, and then the 2 fuel lines. So we'll go ahead and take both the fuel lines off. It's just a flathead, a normal hose clamp on each one of the fuel lines. There's one right here, and the other one is the easy one right here on the outside. So we'll just unscrew those hose clamps and get those out. Make sure when you are going to remove these fuel lines that you make sure you turn your fuel valve or your petcock to the off position. That way no fuel comes out. But it's super easy. This is where you can use the needle nose pliers. If you haven't taken yours off in a while, you may need to. Or just generally put the pliers on and just kind of twist back and forth a little bit to kind of break it loose and then pull it off. I just had mine off, so they're going to come off pretty easy. But once they're both off, you can kind of just pull the fuel line. And it's also a good time to put in a fuel filter, which I still need to do. But you can kind of just put the fuel line aside to make sure it's out of the way. To get the fuel lines off, the next thing to do is remove the throttle cables. Mine does have the Tor's eliminator on it, so it is going to be a little bit different than your stock throttle setup. But for mine, I can just untwist these caps. If you can get your hand in there. You just untwist it like that, and you can pull the slide and everything all out in one piece. So you can just pull it straight up like that, and then just put it on the side. Make sure, be very careful to not bend that needle. So just be sure wherever you put it, the needle's safe and it isn't gonna get dinged or get bent at all. Next, we're just going to remove these 3 hose clamps, one right here to remove this intake boot, and then there is one more on the back side of the carb that actually connects it to the intake itself, which is just these 3 Phillips head screws right here. So you don't have to take them all the way out, obviously, just enough to loosen them to where you can move them around and kind of loosen up the tension on there. Now we're going to remove this intake boot right here, so you can just kind of get a little flathead screwdriver in here, kind of work around the outside to get it out. Work in there a little bit. You can kind of just push it through to the middle and then take it out from underneath, and just make sure you keep track of where these hose clamps go so that you don't lose them, and then they'll be easy to put back on later. Now we are ready to pull the carb out. Keep in mind there is a vacuum line in between the 2 carbs that connects. We'll have to make sure to kind of pull that out. So you just kind of wiggle the carb back and forth here. And once it's out there, you can kind of get back and make sure you pull off that vacuum line, and then you just pull the carb straight out. Now we got the carb out. You can see it's pretty easy, just a couple of steps. Now we can go through and replace our needles. You also have to make sure that you be careful and keep this upright when you first pull it out, because if you haven't drained the fuel out yet, the bowl will be full of fuel, and if you start tilting it, you can start pouring gas out of it and make a mess. Alright, ready to put this carb back in. I like to do them one at a time, just because I find it easier that way. And just make sure if you do them both at one time when you go to put them back in, the one with the choke lever goes on the left side, with the choke obviously pointing out. So we're just going to put it back in. It's pretty easy. Just slide this back into position. I'm not going to worry about this vacuum tube because I am going to pull the carb off of the other side and replace that needle while I'm at it. But you would make sure that this vacuum line connects to the same port on the side of the carb on the right side. But we're just going to slide it in here nice and easy, and then go ahead and just seat it into this intake boot. So that's when you know it's all the way seated, and it's nice and vertical. You know, it's not cocked to one side or anything like that. Then now we'll go ahead and put this boot back in. Make sure not to tighten this yet, so that the carb can still kind of move around and help you to squeeze in here, because it is a bit of a tight squeeze. But just make sure you have both your hose clamps on there. Then you can kind of wedge this in, and it might take you a minute, but you can kind of work it around and kind of seal around that. You know, make sure you get it wrapped all the way around nicely, with the hose clamp on there as well, so it seals nice, and then we'll be ready to tighten those up. So now it's time to just tighten up these hose clamps, and then we will put the throttle slide and needle back in, hook up the fuel line, and that's it. Alright, hopefully it's not too dark and you guys can see that, but we're ready to put this part back in. It's pretty easy. It slides in easy. There is a bigger notch on this side of it. That goes on the outside because there's an adjuster screw that kind of sits in here. So you just have to make sure that this lines up. So you can kind of just slide it in. You might have to twist it back and forth a little bit to make sure it seats in all the way. But once it seats in, it actually goes below the lip. You're ready to just straighten this up and screw it directly on, and that is it. Right, last step after the throttle's back on is just to put back on our fuel lines. So you can just slide it right back over there, slide down the hose clamp, tighten it up, and you are done. I'm going to go ahead and pull off the other carb now and replace that needle, but it's exactly the same process as this, so it's really not nearly as difficult as you may think it is. It's only just a couple of screws, and you know, it takes less than 2 or 3 minutes to get the carb off normally. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Feel free to like or comment anywhere on the video. I'd greatly appreciate it, and let me know if I can help you guys in any way. Thanks.